mind, and a single bead of sweat dripped down his head. His heart pounded in his chest, and he felt alive. "Quackity!" Wilbur tapped Big Q on the shoulder. "Down there!" Quackity looked down at the trap door inside the HQ and then back up to Wilbur. With a little hesitation, Quackity gently raised the hatch and took in the sight of a totally dark room, stirred with dust and smelling of sulfur. He turned back to Wilbur, who was eagerly waiting with a straight posture, smiling in anticipation. Quackity, never one to disappoint, descended the ladder into the darkness. Wilbur and Rambu followed behind and shut the trap door. "Now, Quackity," Wilbur began, "you may be wondering why I brought you here." "I couldn't possibly guess, Wilbur," Quackity responded, the three of them being completely blind in the darkness. "Well, I have to come clean," Wilbur continued. "There is no gift. For you, at least." Quackity's eyes rolled as he feigned surprise. "I never saw this coming," he replied. "You know your horse, Boner?" Wilbur asked with a malicious grin. My horse?" Quackity grew concerned. "Well, yes, I know my horse. What have you done to my horse?" "I'm glad you didn't forget about it, just like you did with everything else from your past life." "Wilbur, what have you done to my horse?" "Don't worry, Quackity. It's not so much what I've done. No, rather what your horse is about to do to itself," Wilbur exclaimed with a manic laugh. He walked over to the wall and pulled the lever as suddenly the entire room was flooded with lamplight. A gentle hum overtook the background noise as the three men's eyes started to adjust to their new surroundings. There was no horse. There stood on the primed pressure plate, scared as all hell, was Tubbo. "I found your horse, Big Q," Tubbo said, a shake in his voice. "I think he's on the surface now." "Wilbur, what the fuck is this?" Quackity asked, rage building in him as his hands trembled into a fist. "What's all that TNT for?" Wilbur's face plummeted as he realized what he had done. "Oh, no, Wilbur shook his head. "Tubbo, how did you get there?" "Tubbo, don't move!" Wilbur shouted down into the cave, a huge dose of terror in his voice. "I went to find Quackity's horse," Tubbo shouted back. "I only saw he was rigged to explode after I swapped places with him. If I stand still, will it still trigger? I don't want to die, Wilbur." Rambu scrambled up the ladder to go find help. "You won't die, Tubbo, it's fine, just stay still, I'm coming to get you," Wilbur said, placing his palm against the glass. "Wilbur, what have you done?" Quackity asked, shoving Wilbur up against the glass of the viewing platform. It creaked gently under their weight. "You want to kill Tubbo to prove a point? You knew he'd come to my aid." "Quackity, this is what I was intending. I was going to blow up your horse." Wilbur was interrupted as Quackity struck him in the stomach with a single punch. Wilbur recoiled with a groan and slumped down to his knees. "Oh, Quackity, please, I can fix this," he stuttered. "You've done enough," Quackity spat before reverting his attention to Tubbo. "Tubbo, how can we get you out of there?" Wilbur darted between Quackity's knees and picked up the fake exit door and hurled it at the glass, creating a small crack across its surface. "Tubbo, I'm coming to save you," he yelled. "Thank you, Wilbur," Tubbo stammered. Wilbur picked up the door again for another throw, but before he could even lift it, Quackity had tackled him to the ground. "I said you've done enough, Wilbur," Quackity said, overpowering him, desperately struggling to pick up the door again, blood trickling down from his nose. Again, Quackity turned his attention to Tubbo. "Tubbo, don't move. What can I do to help?" "I don't know, Big Q," Tubbo began. "I guess you could drop water on the TNT?" "No!" Wilbur exclaimed. "The TNT will just explode the second the redstone circuit's broken." "You are a sick fuck, Wilbur," Quackity said, turning his attention back to the terrorist he was pinning down. "You're a pathetic, spineless bastard." Shut up and help me then," Wilbur shouted. "Start trying to break the glass." Quackity ignored him. "Tubbo, how did you get in? We can just go over and get you out the way you came in." "I don't remember, Big Q," Tubbo responded. I dug my way in. I think Boner got out that way." Quackity muttered something under his breath before releasing Wilbur from his grip and grabbing the door to launch one more time at the glass. Wilbur sprung to his feet and grappled the door, struggling to snatch it from Quackity's hands. "Let me do this, Quackity. I got Tubbo into this mess. I'll get him out," Wilbur exclaimed, attempting to wrench the door out of Quackity's grasp. "He's my citizen. I won't let a citizen of my government die to a terrorist," Quackity shouted back, refusing to relinquish the door. After a few seconds of struggling, Quackity began trying to kick Wilbur. A flurry of 4 swift kicks erupted forwards, missing their target, before one landed squarely against the body of the door, breaking it into 2 halves. Wilbur immediately chucked his half of the door against the glass, doing very little damage due to the loss in mass. He cried out in rage and began scrambling on the stone floor. The two, too out of breath to speak, began searching frantically for an item to hurl at the glass before Wilbur found a sizable rock against the boundary of the room. He held it above his head, ready to throw, before Quackity tackled him once again and tried to wrestle the rock out of his grip. Tubbo watched as the two struggled for what felt like an hour, trying to take the rock from one another, before Wilbur finally swung it against Quackity's jaw, knocking him across the room and releasing Wilbur from the grapple. Immediately, Wilbur threw the rock against the glass, causing it to bounce back across the room. Quackity, now prone, grasped the rock in his hands and threw it over his body directly into the center of the glass pane, shattered it into 1,000 pieces. Wilbur recoiled from the explosion of the glass shards and fell backwards, giving Quackity time to right himself. Tubbo, just... Quackity began, panting out of breath before Wilbur launched himself against Quackity's knees once more, knocking him to the floor. You never cared about Tubbo. You just cared about your image, you maniac, Wilbur shouted, spitting blood as he attempted to pin Quackity's arms down. You just don't want anyone to know that you failed to protect the one person who still cares about you. Tubbo's my friend as much as he's my citizen. I'll protect him at any cost, Quackity responded before biting down hard on Wilbur's arm. Wilbur released his grip and Quackity easily stood up and began to swing his fist across the side of Wilbur's head. The viewing platform shook and erupted in a fistfight as the two violently attacked each other, neither party seeming to get the upper hand. It's at this point Rambu broke through the rock above the cave, scattering grey sunlight into the room. Neither Quackity nor Wilbur saw him collapse into the room and walk up to an increasingly frightened Tubbo. Rambu placed a single foot onto the pressure plate, put a hand on Tubbo's shoulder and said, Tubbo, you need to move, I have a plan. Without hesitation, Tubbo scrambled towards the ladder connecting to the cavern to the viewing platform and he climbed it. He turned back to look at Rambu, who smiled at him with the kind eyes he remembered, and Tubbo smiled back. Once Tubbo had ascended the ladder to safety and curled up in the corner, Rambu began to shout, Wilbur, Quackity! The two immediately stopped fighting and looked down at the new voice. Rambu stood firmly on the pressure plate. Rambu? Quackity said, a cold shot dragging down his spine. Where's... He looked at his left and saw Tubbo, curled up in the corner with his eyes firmly shut. It's okay, guys, Rambu began. Wilbur immediately began rushing to enter the main cave before Rambu raised a hand. Stop, please, he shouted. Don't come closer. Stay in the viewing platform. Rambu, I'll go find something heavy. Just stay there, Wilbur began, but was interrupted by Rambu shaking his head. I have an idea, he began, his words echoing around the cave. I know what to do. I know how to defuse the bomb and make you realize how frivolous this whole thing is. He smiled. But tell me, Wilbur, Quackity, the burgers were good, right? Yes, Wilbur answered, instantly reacting. They're the best, Rambu, and they'll continue to be the best. Let me get you out. No, Wilbur, I just wanted to know. But it was never about the burgers, was it? Rambu said. Rambu smiled. Rambu jumped. Searing flames and a violent burst of air was all that was left. For a change, the world really did end. Wilbur felt alive.